Hey guys, tonight we're heading out where the sky is wide and the trails are long. You can feel it already, can't you? The sun is a burning coin dropping behind the mesas, painting the clouds in shades of rust and bruised plum. The only sound is the rhythmic creak of saddle leather and the tired sigh of your horse, kicking up a fine red dust that settles on everything you own. A lone coyote yelps, a quick, sharp sound that makes the hairs on your arms stand up, not from fear, but from the simple, wild truth of the place. It's a hard land, and truth be told, a man like you probably won't survive this ride without a good story to keep him warmed up. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's the quiet support that keeps these tailies on the trail. Go on and drop your location and the time where you are in the comments below. It's always a quiet marvel to see where we're all gathered from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The town appears the way most things do out here, slowly, then all at once. For an hour, it's just a smudge of shadow in the heat haze, a promise that could easily be a lie. But then, shapes begin to form. A water tower, stark against the fading light. The sharp angle of a roof. You ease back on the reins and your horse, an old bay named Silas, who has more opinions than a town council, lets out a grateful huff. You've been riding since dawn, and the ache has settled deep in your bones. A familiar tenant that never quite moves out. You guide Silas down the single main street. The sign says, Solitude. It's honest, you'll give it that. The town is little more than a collection of weary-looking wooden buildings, their faces weathered and gray. There's a general store, its windows dark. A saloon from which a tinny piano tune limps out into the evening air. A blacksmith's shop, the forge cold and silent. You weren't planning on staying. The goal was simple. Get a sack of flour, some coffee, maybe a tin of peaches if the store owner wasn't feeling greedy, and be back on the trail by sunrise. It's a rhythm that has served you well, but then you smell it not. It cuts right through. The scent of dust, dry wood, and the faint, ever-present smell of horse. It's warm, rich, and alive. It's the smell of yeast and fire and home. It's bread, good bread, the kind your mother used to make, a memory so distant it feels like it belongs to another man. The scent is coming from a small building tucked between the assayer's office and a shuttered mercantile. It's the only place with a warm, golden light spilling from its window, a single beacon in the gathering dusk. A simple, hand-painted sign hangs above the door, Alara's Bakery. You swing down from the saddle, your knees protesting the sudden return to solid ground. You tether Silas to the hitching post, giving his neck a good scratch. He leans into your hand, a silent understanding passing between you. He knows the day is done. You, however, feel like your day is just beginning, pulled forward by a force more powerful than hunger. It's curiosity. Historians still argue whether the quiet, observant cowboys were more common than the dime novel gunslingers, but you know your kind. You watch, you listen, and you rarely act unless you have to. But this scent, this is a call to action. You pause at the door, your hand hovering over the latch. You take in the details. The glass in the window is clean, a rarity out here. There's a small pot of stubborn-looking geraniums on the sill, fighting the good fight against the arid air. This isn't just a business. It's a place someone cares about. It's a small patch of order carved out of the vast, chaotic canvas of the frontier. People who came out here under the Homestead Act of 1862 were promised 160 acres, a chance to build a life from scratch. They weren't promised it would be easy. They weren't promised clean windows or the smell of fresh bread. Those were luxuries. You had to make for yourself. You push the door open. A small bell, delicate and clear, announces your arrival. The inside of the bakery is warmer than the evening air, and the scent of baked goods is so thick you can almost taste it. It's a simple space, immaculately clean. A long wooden counter, worn smooth by time and trade, separates you from the back. The shelves behind it are mostly bare, a testament to a good day's work or a town with a healthy appetite. Your eyes scan the room, taking it all in. There's a cast iron stove in the corner, now dormant, its metal sides still radiating. A gentle warmth. Everything seems to have its place. It's the opposite of your life, where everything you own is packed to fit the back of a horse. Then you see her. She's behind the counter, her back to you, wiping down a wooden prep surface. She moves with a quiet efficiency, a grace born from repeating the same tasks day in and day out. She wears a simple, dark dress with a white apron tied around her waist, dusted with a fine constellation of flour. When the bell's chime finally fades, she turns, and for a moment, she just looks at you. She doesn't seem startled, just observant. You get the feeling not much gets past her. Her face is framed by dark hair pulled back, with a few stray wisps clinging to her temples. There are tired lines around her eyes, the kind that come from early mornings and long worries, but her gaze is direct, steady. You're not a man who gets flustered, but the silence in this room feels different. It's not the vast, empty silence of the plains. It's a small, intimate silence, heavy with the day's last breath. The bell on the door seems to have been more conversation than you've had all week. You clear your throat, a rough, dusty sound, but you don't speak. Words feel clumsy, too large for this delicate space. Instead, your gaze shifts to the single object on a shelf behind her. One last loaf of bread. It's rustic and round with a dark, crackled crust. You give a slight nod toward it. That's all. A simple gesture. She understands immediately. Her expression doesn't change, but you see a flicker of acknowledgement in her eyes. She turns, takes the loaf from the shelf, and wraps it in a piece of clean, brown paper. The crinkling of the paper is the only sound in the room, loud and crisp. She places the wrapped loaf on the counter between you. It sits there like a treaty, a peace offering between the wildness you represent and the civilization she has built. Reach into your saddlebags, which you've carried in with you out of habit, and pull out a few coins. You place them on the counter, pushing them forward. One of them is a Morgan silver dollar, but the other two are worn so smooth you can't tell who the man on them is supposed to be. Not that he'd recognize this part of the country anyway. As she reaches for the payment, her fingers brush against yours. Her skin is warm and surprisingly soft, despite the work you know she does. It's a fleeting touch, over in an instant. But it sends a jolt through you, a strange current of warmth that has nothing to do with her ovens. "Mom," you say. The word feels inadequate, a small worn stone dropped into a deep well. "Thank you," she replies, her voice softer than you expected, with a slight, unplaceable accent. You take the wrapped loaf. It's still warm, the heat seeping through. The paper into your hands. You give her a final nod, a gesture of thanks and dismissal all in one, and turn to leave. Her quiet strength is something you understand. Many of the unwritten laws of the West were about recognizing fortitude. You didn't bother a man on the trail unless it was an emergency, and you afforded a woman running a business on her own. Wide berth of respect. She was like one of those sourdough starters the pioneers carried, a living thing of yeast and flour that had to be kept alive through drought and flood, carefully tended to provide sustenance. She was tending her own life here, in the middle of nowhere. As you reach the door, you wonder about her. Historians debate the true literacy rates on the frontier, with some saying most were barely literate, and others pointing to the constant demand for books and newspapers. You look at the intelligence in her eyes and find yourself believing the latter. You bet she can read, and you wonder what stories she might know beyond the one she's living. You pull the door open, and a little bell rings your departure, its sound following you out into the cool, purple twilight. Asterisk, you step out into the street, and the cool air feels like a splash of water on your face after the warmth of the bakery. The world has shifted. The sky is now a deep, velvety indigo, and the first stars are beginning to prick through the fabric of the night. The piano music from the saloon seems farther away, the notes softened by the distance. You hold the wrapped loaf in your hand, its gentle heat a small living presence against your palm. It feels heavier than it should, weighted with unspoken things. Silas nickers softly as you approach, his breath fogging in the cooling air. You untie his reins, giving his nose a final pat before swinging up into the saddle. The familiar creak of the leather is a comforting sound, the rhythm of your life resuming. You don't look back at the bakery's lighted window. You don't need to. The image of it, and of the woman inside, is already burned into your mind. You ride out of solitude, leaving the faint yellow lights behind, heading for a small, sheltered spot by a creek a mile or so out of town. It's a place you know, a place where the cottonwoods grow thick and the water runs clear. The rituals of making camp are automatic, movements so practiced you could do them in your sleep. You unsaddle Silas, checking his back for sores before giving him a good rub-down with a coarse blanket. You lead him to the creek for a long drink, his quiet sighs of contentment echoing your own. You gather dry wood, build a small smokeless fire, and set your dented coffee pot on to boil. Your coffee is a famously potent brew, strong enough to dissolve a horseshoe, but it's a necessary companion for the trail. Only when the fire is crackling steadily and Silas is contentedly cropping. At the sparse grass, do you allow yourself to sit? You lean back against your saddle, the worn leather cool against your back. For a moment, you just watch the flames dance, your mind as quiet as the landscape around you. Then you remember the bread. You place the package on your lap and carefully unfold the brown paper, revealing the loaf. In the firelight, its crust is a tapestry of deep browns and golds. It looks like a shield. You draw your knife, the same one you use for skinning game and mending tack, and cut off a thick slice. Steam, fragrant and impossibly inviting, escapes into the night air. You lift the slice and take the first bite, and you stop. The crust gives way with a satisfying crackle, yielding to a soft, chewy interior. It isn't just flour and water. There's a faint, nutty sweetness from the wheat, a subtle tang from the starter she must keep, and an overwhelming flavor of care. It's the taste of something made by human hands that weren't your own. You chew slowly, deliberately. Your usual meal is jerky and hardtack, food for survival, not for thought. But this bread demands your attention. It's a communion. Silas seems to agree, as he stopped chewing and is now staring at the loaf with an expression of deep, philosophical longing. You take another bite, and a profound loneliness washes over you, sharper than you've felt in years. Scholars still question the psychological toll of profound isolation on the lone frontiersman. Was it a source of strength or a slow-acting poison? You've always considered it a choice, a preference. But this bread, this simple, honest loaf, makes you feel the vastness of your solitude. It's a message from a world you keep at a distance, a world of hearths and homes, of shared meals and quiet company. You think of the boom towns, like the ones that sprang up around the Comstock lode, bursting with noise and greed and men scrambling for silver. You fled those places. You chose this. But did you choose to forget what a piece of real bread tasted like? You brew a cup of Mormon tea, a bitter drink made from the ephedra shrubs that grow wild here, its familiar taste a grounding counterpoint to the bread's richness. As you eat and drink, you think of her. The baker, Alara. You picture her hands, dusted with flour, kneading this very dough. You see the patience in her eyes. It takes skill to survive out here, a truth you live by every day. But her skill is different. It isn't about tracking or hunting or navigating by the stars. It's about creation. It's about turning the raw, coarse ingredients of the frontier flour, water, fire into something that feels like grace. You finish the slice, then another, until a quarter of the loaf is gone. You wrap the rest carefully, like a treasure. The fire burns low. Your coffee is gone, but the warmth in your belly feels like it will last through the night. You wake before the sun, as is your custom. The air holds the deep desert cold that comes just before dawn, and a sliver of a moon hangs in the west. The embers of your fire are pale gray, a ghost of last night's warmth. You rise, stretching. The stiffness from your back, your movements economical and sure. You walk to the creek, splash icy water on your face, and the day begins. This is your church, this quiet moment when the world is still holding its breath, and you are the only one awake to witness it. You set the coffee pot over a newly kindled fire. While it heats, you check on Silas. He's standing peacefully, head bowed, still half asleep. You run a hand down his flank, feeling the solid warmth of him. Historians often debate the level of attachment a cowboy had to his horse. For some, it was just a tool, a necessary piece of equipment for the job. For others, the horse was a partner, a confidant, the only other living soul they might speak to for weeks on end. You look at Silas, his gentle eye watching you, and you know which side of that debate you fall on. The trail calls. It always does. It's a low hum in your blood, a pull toward the horizon. You could be packed and riding in 20 minutes, chasing the sunrise, another 100 miles of dust and distance unfolding before you. It's what you do. It's who you are. The great cattle trails, like the Chisholm, were built on that simple principle. Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't look back. But this morning, for the first time in a long time, the hum is faint. It's being drowned out by the memory of warm bread and a quiet, steady gaze. You cut another slice from the loaf. It's just as good cold. The flavor somehow more concentrated now. As you eat, leaning against a cottonwood, you know you are making a choice. Or rather avoiding one. To ride on is to forget, to stay. Well, you don't know what that is? A large tumbleweed, a Russian thistle that's only been in this country a few years, rolls past your camp, a rootless wanderer just like you. You watch it go, a dry, scratchy sound against the dirt. You've always felt a kinship with them, but today it feels lonely. You need a reason. A man like you can't just linger. Loitering is for grifters and dreamers. You are neither. You need a purpose, a task, something solid to anchor you to this place for one more day. And that's when the idea takes root. It's a quiet, insidious little thought that feels remarkably like good sense. You walk back over to Silas, your coffee cup in hand. Let's have a look at you, old boy, you murmur. You run your hands down his legs and lift his front right hoof, cradling it in your lap. You scrape out the packed dirt with your knife and examine the shoe. You stare at it, turning the hoof this way and that in the growing light. You examine it with the intensity of a jeweler looking for a flaw in a diamond. The shoe is worn, yes, but it's sound. It would last another month, maybe 2. But you look closer. There's a nail head that seems just a little high. If you press on the shoe, just so, there's the faintest hint of a wobble. A man could almost convince himself it's loose. A responsible man, a man who values his horse above all else, would certainly not risk a long ride on a shoe like that. The trail ahead has plenty of opportunities to get thrown from a horse. No need to invite one. You drop the hoof and stand. Up, wiping your hands on your trousers. A slow smile touches your lips. A private, wry thing. You've found your excuse. It's a fine excuse. A noble one, even. It's about foresight and proper care for your animal. It has absolutely nothing to do with a quiet woman in a clean apron, or the way a bakery smells at dusk. Nothing at all. You look at Silas, who simply blinks at you, oblivious to the role he's just played in your internal drama. Well, looks. Like you've earned us another day of civilization, you lucky old soul. You tell him, your voice low. You down the last of your coffee, kick dirt over the fire, and begin to saddle him up. You're not riding out toward the open plains. You're riding back into town. Back to solitude. Asterisk riding into solitude for the second time is a different experience. Yesterday, you were a shadow arriving with the dusk, looking only for an exit. Today, the sun is climbing the sky, casting long, sharp-edged shadows across. The street. The town is awake and moving with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a Tuesday morning. A woman shakes a rug out of an upstairs window. 2 old men are already locked in a game of checkers on a barrel outside the general store. And from down the street, you hear the clear, rhythmic clang of a hammer on an anvil. It's a sound of purpose. Your purpose. You guide Silas directly. To the blacksmith's shop, swinging down before he's even fully stopped. The smith is a mountain of a man named Olson, with arms thicker than your legs and a beard stained with soot. He looks up from the wagon wheel he's mending, his expression unchanging. Blacksmiths were the bedrock of any frontier town. They fixed the tools that grew the food, the wagons that brought the goods, and the guns that kept the peace. You were. Always careful to be on a blacksmith's good side. Morning, you say, keeping it brief. Horse through a shoe. You amend the lie slightly, making it more dramatic. It sounds better than the shoe is a little wobbly. Olson grunts and walks over, running a critical, expert hand down Silas's leg. He lifts the hoof you'd so carefully inspected. He looks at it for a long moment, then looks at you. You meet his gaze without flinching. There's a long pause where you're certain he's about to call you a liar. Instead, he just says, it's loose. Leave him. I'll get to it after this wheel. Come back around noon. Appreciate it, you nod, turning away before. He can see the relief on your face. You give Silas a final pat, a silent thank you for his unwitting conspiracy, and watch Olson lead him into the dark, smoky interior of the shop. Silas is probably getting the best care he's had in years, all in service of your sudden interest in local commerce. Now you have 3, maybe 4 hours to kill. An eternity. You stand in the street, suddenly feeling conspicuous. The saloon is an option, but it's too early for whiskey, and the company is usually louder than you'd like. You could sit with the checker players, but that would involve conversation. And so your feet, seemingly with a mind of their own, begin to carry you across the dusty street. Back toward the bakery. You tell yourself it's for coffee. And man, waiting on his horse, is entitled to a cup of coffee. It's a perfectly reasonable, even predictable, course of action. A flimsy excuse, but the best you have on such short notice. You hesitate at the door for just a second, then push it open. The little bell chimes its cheerful greeting. Got the bakery smells of coffee and cinnamon this morning. Alara is there, behind the counter, placing a row of fresh, glistening cinnamon rolls onto a tray. She looks up as you enter, and this time, there's no surprise. Not even a flicker. It's as if she was expecting you. Coffee? She asks before you can even open your mouth. Her voice is still soft, but it holds a note of gentle amusement. Yes, ma'am, you manage. She turns to pour a cup from a vase. Large, steaming hot. You notice the distinctive red and yellow tin on the shelf behind her. Arbuckle's Ariosa coffee. The famous Cowboy coffee, the first to be sold in sealed 1-pound bags. Every bag came with a peppermint stick, a little bonus for the buyer. She brings the heavy ceramic mug to the counter, and next to it, she places a single red and white striped peppermint stick. You put a coin on the counter, and as you reach for the mug, your eyes meet hers. And that's when it happens. It's not a smile, not exactly. It's a small, slow lifting at the corner of her mouth, a light that enters her eyes. It's a look of pure, undiluted acknowledgement. It says, "I know you didn't come back for the coffee." You feel a responding smile. Touch your own lips as you give a slow, deliberate nod. Your nod says it all. You're right, and I know that you know. It's a silent, weightless conversation, a bridge built in a single moment. Anthropologists could debate for a century about how social bonds are formed in transient communities, but you've just lived the answer. It's formed by a shared, unspoken understanding. You take your coffee and the peppermint stick and retreat to a small 2-person table by the window. From here, you can see the blacksmith's shop, a perfect vantage point to wait. You sip the coffee. It's rich and strong, a world away from your own campfire brew. You don't look at her directly, but you're aware of every small sound she makes. The slide of a tray into the display case, the soft whisking of a broom on the floorboards. The silence in the room isn't empty anymore. It's comfortable. It's shared. You finish the last of the coffee, the rich taste lingering on your tongue. The silence in the bakery remains, a comfortable blanket woven between you and her. But you know you can't stay here all morning. That would be a different kind of statement, one you're not ready to make. You stand, bringing the empty mug back to the counter. Your eyes meet hers again, and you give another simple, single nod. It's becoming your language. She returns it, a silent acknowledgement of your departure. You turn and step back out into the brightness of the day. The street is more active now. A freight wagon rumbles past, kicking up a cloud of dust that you turn your face from. You need a place to settle, a place to wait where you won't look, like a man without a purpose. The long, shaded boardwalk in front of the general store is the perfect spot. It's the town's unofficial gathering place, a perch from which to watch the slow theater of daily life unfold. You settle onto the edge of the boardwalk, your back against a support pillar, and retrieve your saddlebags. A man like you always has something that needs mending. You pull out one of your heavy riding gloves. The stitching along the index finger has come loose, a small problem that could become a big one if left alone. From a small leather pouch, you take out a curved needle, a spool of waxed thread, and a small, sharp awl. The needle feels clumsy in your fingers, but the work is steady and honest. It gives you something to focus on, a reason to be sitting here, an excuse to be still and listen. The 2 old men you saw earlier, Jeb and Silas, it gives you a start to hear your horse's name on a person, are still at their checkerboard. Their game punctuated by long silences and the soft click of wood on wood. The store's owner, a balding man named Henry, comes out to lean against the doorframe. Heard they caught that fellow who tried to rob the stage over near Prescott. Henry says to no one in particular. Jeb doesn't look up from the board. The railroad's bringing in the Pinkertons now. A fella'd have to be a fool to try anything on their lines. They fall silent again, the only sound your own steady work and the distant, rhythmic clang from the blacksmith's. You pull. A stitch tight, your head down, focusing on your glove. You've learned more from pretending not to listen than you ever did from asking questions. That bakery of hers is doing good business, Silas says, finally looking up after making a triumphant triple jump. Smells better than my wife's kitchen, that's for sure. It's the only thing that keeps her from complaining about me, sitting out here all morning. It's a miracle what she's done with that place. Henry, the store owner, agrees. When her Thomas died, I thought for sure she'd pack it in, head back east where she came from. We all did. Your hands still. You keep your eyes on the needle, but your focus is entirely on their words. Jeb nods. That was a bad business, him getting pinned under that timber. He was a good man, Thomas. Full of dreams. Couldn't hammer a nail straight to save his life, mind you, but full of dreams. She's the one with the grit, Henry says, his voice low with respect. Sold their claim for what she could get, took every penny, and bought the old assay office. Place was nothing but a shack full of splinters and sawdust insulation. She rebuilt half of it herself before Olson and a few others stepped in to help with the heavy beams. The story settles over you, filling in the spaces around the quiet woman in the flour-dusted apron. So her name is Alara, and she is a widow. The bakery isn't just a business. It's a monument. It's what she built from the ashes of a tragedy. You look at your own calloused hands, hands that know work, and you feel a new, deeper level of respect. It makes you think about what it takes to make it out here. Sociologists are always debating the role of community support versus sheer individual grit in frontier survival. Listening to them, it sounds like Alara needed a powerful dose of both. You finish the last stitch on the glove and not the thread, trimming it with your knife. The repair is solid, clean. You look across the street at the bakery. The warm, lighted window looks different now. It's not just a beacon of comfort. It's a beacon of defiance. A testament to a woman who chose not to run, but to build. And you realize the quietness you saw in her isn't shyness or sorrow. It's strength. The kind of profound, unshakable strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. Asterisk, you sit with the knowledge of her story, the mended glove resting in your lap. The sun climbs higher, bleaching the color from the sky and beating down on the dusty street. The town's rhythm shifts into the midday lull, a quiet period of waiting for the afternoon to cool. You watch the front of the bakery. You see a woman come out, a small parcel wrapped in paper in her hand. You see one of the old checker players, Jeb, hobble over and go inside, emerging a minute later with a small bun. Each time someone uses the single wooden step leading up to her door, you notice it. A tiny, almost imperceptible wobble. Yesterday, you wouldn't have given it a second thought. A wobbly step is just another piece of a world that's slowly falling apart. But today, knowing what you know, you see it differently. You see it as a small, nagging chore on a long list for a woman with too much to do. You see it as a potential hazard. A good way to announce a customer, maybe, but a twisted ankle waiting to happen. You think of her, alone in there, kneading dough before dawn, and you picture her having to haul wood and water, balance ledgers, and still find the time to fix a loose step. It's a small thing, but small things have a way of adding up. The thought takes hold, as solid and sure as a stone in your hand. You're going to fix it. It's not an offer of charity. A woman with her kind of grit, the grit you heard about, in the old men's whispers, wouldn't take kindly to that. This will be a transaction, not of coin, but of skill. An exchange of labor, quiet and unasked for. A conversation in the language of work. Archaeologists digging up sites from this era often debate whether the constant evidence of repair and reuse reflects poverty or a philosophy of profound resourcefulness. You know it's the latter. You don't waste what can be fixed. The clock on the assayer's office strikes noon. Time to fetch your horse. You stand, tucking the mended glove into your pocket, and walk across the street. The heat radiates up from the dirt in shimmering waves. Olson is wiping his hands on an oily rag as you approach. All set, he grunts, gesturing with his thumb toward Silas, who is tied up just inside the cavernous doorway. Wasn't about to fall off, but It's tight now. You nod, hiding your slight embarrassment at being caught in your benevolent lie. What do I owe you? 2 bits. You pull a quarter from your pocket and hand it to him. 25 cents. Your fabricated excuse just cost you a real quarter, a fair price for a good conscience and another morning in solitude. As Olson's thick fingers swallow the coin, you let your eyes drift to the scrap pile. Behind his shop, a chaotic jumble of rusted metal, broken tools, and discarded iron bands. Mind if I pick a piece of flat stock from your pile? You ask, your tone casual. Got a strap on my saddlebag that needs bracing. Olson shrugs, a gesture that means help yourself. Long as it's from the junk pile, knock yourself. Out. You retrieve Silas, leading him out into the sun. Then you walk to the scrap pile. You're not looking for something to brace a strap. You're looking for a shim. After a minute of sifting through the metal, you find a small, flat piece of iron about the size of your palm. It's perfect. Next, you need a hammer. You scan the ground and find a hefty, smooth river stone that fits satisfyingly in your hand. Your tools acquired, you are ready. You lead Silas not out of town, but back toward the general store's hitching post, tying him in the shade. Then, with the flat iron in one pocket and the river stone in the other, you walk toward the bakery. You feel a strange sense of purpose, a quiet determination. You're about to perform unlicensed carpentry on the property of a woman you barely know. And somehow, in the strange logic of this dusty town and your own unspoken feelings, it seems like the most natural thing in the world to do. You approach the step not as a customer, but as a craftsman. You crouch down, the sun warm on your back, and place your hands on the wooden plank. You press down, testing the movement. It gives with a low groan, a complaint from the wood. The board itself is good, solid pine, likely brought in on the railroad that had changed the face of the country a decade ago. Before that, every piece of milled lumber was a treasure. The problem isn't the wood. It's what's underneath. You take out the flat piece of iron from your pocket. It's not a pry bar, but it will do. You work the edge into the seam between the else, step and the riser, and with a slow, steady pressure, you lever the board up. The old square-cut nails resist, screeching in protest, before pulling free from the support beam. You lift the board off and set it aside carefully. Just as you thought. The beam is sound, but the nail holes have widened over time, worn down by countless footsteps, by heat and cold, by the relentless passing of seasons. It's an easy fix, if you have the mind for it. You take your knife and whittle 2 small, sliver-thin shims from a piece of dry kindling you find nearby. You fit them into the old nail holes, tapping them snug. As you work, you notice something on the main support beam, a small, carved symbol near the edge, 2 interlocking circles. A carpenter's mark. It's a faint, personal signature left by the man who built this. Thomas, her husband. You run your thumb over the mark, a moment of connection with the ghost who haunts this place. You make sure your repair won't disturb it. That's when you feel it. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. It's a feeling you know well. Primal instinct honed by years on the trail. You don't jerk your head up. You continue your work, your movements smooth and deliberate. You place the step back into its position, aligning it carefully. Only then do you allow your eyes to lift slowly to the bakery window. She's there, a silhouette against the light inside, her form softened by the glass. She is perfectly still, her hands clasped in front of her. She is watching you. Your heart gives a single, hard thump against your ribs. You feel a sudden wave of self-consciousness, a foolish notion that your technique is now under expert review, and you'd better not smash your thumb. You hold her gaze for no more than a second. It's long enough. You see no alarm, no anger. Only a deep, still watchfulness, You give no sign, no wave, no smile. That would break the quiet contract being drawn up between you. You simply drop your gaze and return to the task at hand. The work is your only message. You take the river stone from your pocket. Olson, the blacksmith, would probably charge you with tool malpractice if he saw you using a rock for a hammer, but it feels right. It feels honest. You position one of the original nails over the board. You lift the stone and bring it down. Clunk. The sound is solid, satisfying. Clunk. The nail sinks deeper into the wood, biting into the new shim. Clunk. It's driven home, flush with the surface dot. You do the same with the other nail. Each blow is measured. A word in a sentence. This is a language, you know. It's the language of making things right. Historians studying material culture debate whether an object's value lies in its materials or the labor invested in it. As you feel, a step becomes solid under your hands. You know the answer. You are investing your labor, your time, your intention, and in doing so, you are changing this simple step into something more. When you're done, you test it. You put your full weight on it. It's solid as a rock. It doesn't move, doesn't groan. You give it one last satisfying stomp. That ought to hold until the next big thunderstorm or a particularly heavy customer, whichever comes first. You stand up, brushing the dust and wood shavings from the knees of your trousers. You gather your things, the stone, the iron shim, your knife, and put them away. The job is finished. You cast one final glance at the window. The silhouette is gone. Asterisk, you give the solid step one final, approving glance. The job is done. Your message, sent via hammer and nail, has been delivered. There is nothing left to do. To linger now would be to wait for thanks, and that would cheapen the act entirely. You turn your back on the bakery and walk toward your horse, the dust puffing up around your boots. Each step feels final, a punctuation mark on the end of a strange and silent chapter. You feel a sense of clean satisfaction from the work, but it's mingled with a familiar, faint ache of departure. You're halfway across the street when you hear it. First, the bright, clear chime of the little bell on the bakery door. Then a voice, softer than you expected it to be, yet carrying with perfect clarity in the still midday air. Mister? You stop dead. The voice snags you, holds you in place more surely than a rope. You've been called many things in your life, some good, some bad, but that simple, questioning word feels heavier than all of them. You turn slowly. She is standing on the step you just fixed, her hand resting lightly on the doorframe. She holds a small, paper-wrapped parcel. For a moment, she just stands there, and you stand in the middle of the street, the sun beating down on you. Then she descends the steps solidly, without a wobble, and walks toward you. The entire town of Solitude seems to be holding its breath. The checker players have stopped their game. The freight wagon is gone. It's just you, her, and the wide, empty space between you. She stops a respectable few feet away and holds out the parcel. The paper is grease-stained and warm. The smell of hot apples and cinnamon reaches you, a sweet, intoxicating cloud. For your work, she says. It's not a question. It's a declaration. A protest forms in your throat. You shake your head. Slightly, a gesture of refusal. That wasn't necessary, ma'am. You did the work freely. Payment was never the point. But your stomach, smelling the offering, stages a silent but powerful rebellion against your principles. Please, she says, her gaze unwavering. She doesn't move the parcel an inch closer, but her eyes insist. It's a fair trade. That word trade changes everything. It's not a handout. It's not charity. It's a recognition of your unspoken contract. She is honoring the terms. She understood. You slowly reach out and take the parcel from her. It's warm in your hands, a perfect echo of the loaf of bread from the night before. The step is solid. You say, feeling the need to state the obvious, to say something, anything. "I noticed," she replies, a faint hint of a smile in. Her voice, not an awkward silence, hangs between you, but it's a different kind of silence now. It's one of anticipation, not avoidance. You think about the town's name. Linguists are always debating how a place's name shapes the people in it. Was it just irony that two solitary people were finally finding their voices in a town called Solitude? She breaks the silence first. "My name is Ilara." She offers it simply, a fact laid bare. It feels like a gift more precious than the warm pastry in your hands. You clear your throat. "Caleb," you say. Your own name sounds rusty, unfamiliar on your tongue. "Caleb," she repeats, tasting the sound of it. "Well, Caleb, thank you for the fine work." This interaction is a perfect example of the barter economy that keeps the frontier running. Cash is king, but it's often a distant king. More often, life is sustained by the trade of skills and goods, a mended plow. For a sack of potatoes, a new roof for a side of cured bacon, a repaired step for a warm apple turnover. You wonder if the turnover is made with real apples, a true luxury, or if it's a desperation pie, a clever invention of vinegar and spice meant to mimic the fruit. Knowing what you know of her, you suspect she's resourceful enough for either. You're welcome, Ilara, you say. The sound of her name on your lips feels both strange and right. You've had more real conversation in the last 2 minutes than you've had in the last 2 months, and it feels like you've just run a mile. You nod, she nods, and the transaction is complete. She turns and walks back to her bakery, leaving you standing in the sun, holding your payment. You stand there in the middle of the street, the world silent, except for the faint ringing in your ears. The warmth from the pastry in your hand is a grounding presence, an anchor in a moment that feels strangely unreal. You look from the bakery. Door, now closed, to your horse, Silas, waiting patiently by the general store. The transaction is over. The invisible thread that held you here has been cut. The trail is calling again, and this time the pull feels urgent, an instinct to retreat to the familiar quiet of your own company. You've lingered long enough. You walk over to Silas, untying his reins. You tuck the precious paper-wrapped turnover safely into your saddlebag. The plan is clear. You'll ride out, find a sheltered spot a few miles away, and let the memory of the last 24 hours settle. You swing into the saddle, the leather creaking a familiar welcome. That's when you feel the change, Dot. It's not one thing, but many things at once. The air, which had been hot and dry, suddenly becomes thick, heavy, and hard to breathe. The sunlight shifts, losing its clean, white edge and taking on a sickly, yellow-green hue, as if the world is being seen through a dirty piece of glass. A profound silence falls over the town, a vacuum where the normal sounds of life used to be. The birds have vanished. Far away, on the western horizon, a line of clouds that was once a harmless smudge is now a towering, bruised purple wall, boiling and churning in on itself. You know this sky. This is a blue norther, a monster of a storm that can drop the temperature 30 degrees in as many minutes. You see a strange, ethereal flicker of pale blue light dance along the top of the town's water tower St. Elmo's fire, an eerie and beautiful warning of a massive electrical charge in the atmosphere. The universe, it seems, has strong opinions about your travel plans today. "Hoo boy," you murmur to Silas, who is already shifting nervously beneath you, his ears twitching. The first gust of wind hits like a physical blow. It's not a breeze. It's a solid wall of air that rips the hat from your head, sending it tumbling down the street. A wave of dust, thick and choking, scours the town, momentarily blinding you. The wind howls, a high, keening sound like a banshee. The first drops of rain are not drops at all. They are heavy, cold pellets that splatter in the dust, leaving dark circles the size of silver dollars dot. Then the sky opens. A torrent of rain, driven sideways by the wind, descends on solitude. It's a deafening, roaring deluge that turns the street into a muddy, churning river in seconds. A brilliant fork of lightning splits the sky, followed an instant later by a crack of thunder so violent it feels like the mountains themselves have cracked in two. Riding out is no longer an option. It's a death sentence. You are trapped. Your only thought is for Silas. You urge him forward, half blinded by the rain, toward the livery stable at the far end of town. See, you shout to him over the roar, the words whipped away by the wind. Told you that new shoe was a good idea. Wouldn't want to be running from this. You make it to the stable, its wide doors blessedly open. You lead Silas inside, the relative quiet and dimness a shocking relief. You hand the reins and a coin to the stable boy, a lanky teenager with wide, scared eyes. After ensuring Silas is settled, you step back out to the stable doorway, huddling under the overhang. The world outside is a chaotic nightmare of wind and water. You are soaked to the bone, your shirt plastered to your skin, but you realize you're still clutching your saddlebags. You open the flap. The paper around the turnover is damp, but the pastry itself is safe. You can't help a wry smile. At least you saved the important thing. You lean against the doorframe, watching the storm rage. The sheer ferocity of it is staggering. You've seen storms, but this one feels ancient, primal. Some say the climate is changing, that the little ice age that chilled the world for centuries is finally ending. But historians and meteorologists will likely debate for years whether the storms of this era were more volatile than the ones to come. All you know is that your carefully laid plan to leave has been washed away. Your solitary rhythm is broken. You, a man who answers to no one, have been put in your place by the sky. You are stuck in solitude, with nothing to do but wait for the weeping prairie to cry itself out. Asterisk, you stand under the livery stable's overhang, a solitary castaway on a wooden island, watching the world drown. The initial fury of the storm settles into a grim, relentless rhythm. The wind howls, a constant, mournful note, and the rain falls in a solid gray sheet, obscuring everything more than 20 feet away. The street is a torrent of brown water, carrying loose branches and debris eastward. This isn't a storm that will pass in a few minutes. This is a storm that has settled in for a long visit. The overhang provides marginal shelter, but the wind keeps driving cold spray onto you, and the dampness is beginning to seep into your bones. You need better cover. The saloon is out. The blacksmith shop is dark and shuttered. That leaves the general store. It's the town's social anchor, its most public indoor space. It's the logical place to take refuge. You pull the collar of your soaked shirt up, tighten the strap on your saddlebags, and take a breath. Then you run. You leap from the boardwalk into the ankle-deep water, splashing through the muddy current toward the heart of the town. The rain is a physical force, cold and stinging. You keep your head down, your eyes on the faint, welcoming yellow light of the general store's windows. You reach the far boardwalk and stumble up the steps, your boots heavy with mud and water. You throw the door open and half fall inside, bringing a gust of wind and a puddle of water in with you. The warmth of the store is a shock. It smells of kerosene, damp wool, dry goods, and coffee. The owner, Henry, looks up from behind his counter. The two old checker players, Jeb and Silas, are huddled near the pot-bellied stove and standing by the front window, staring out at the deluge. Is ELARA. Of course. The storm caught her just as it caught you. She turns as you enter, her eyes meeting yours. She's holding a damp shawl around her shoulders. and her hair has been tousled by the wind, but she looks as composed as ever. "Don't you worry about the floor, Caleb," Henry says in a dry voice, eyeing the puddle forming at your feet. "Needed a good washing anyway. Come get warm." You give a grateful nod and move toward the stove, dripping a trail of water behind you. You're more nervous making small talk with Ilara than you are facing the lightning, but the storm has thrown you together. The shared adversity principle, some call it the idea that enduring a crisis together can forge a bond faster than weeks of peaceful courtship. This storm feels less like a crisis and more like a conspiracy to push the two of you into the same room. Quite a squall. You say to the room at large, your voice sounding rough. "Came up fast," Ilara replies, her voice the calmest thing in the room. She turns fully from the window now, giving you her attention. "Your horse is all right?" The question surprises you. It's a simple gesture of concern, a continuation of the trade you made earlier. "Yes, ma'am." "Safe in the livery. Your bakery?" You almost stumble over the words. "The roof is sound?" "I believe so," she says. "It's well built." There's a quiet pride in her voice when she says that the conversation is simple, practical. It's the talk of survivors. Henry complains that the telegraph lines will be down for a week, cutting solitude off completely. Jeb, the checker player, declares the storm a fine thing, as it means his opponent can't invent an excuse to flee a losing game. As the small talk ebbs and flows, you find yourself observing the details of the store. Behind the counter, next to a calendar from the Union Pacific Railroad, is a small, ornate frame. Inside, woven into intricate floral patterns, is a wreath made of human hair. It's a piece of hair work, a common but poignant Victorian memento of a loved one. You wonder whose hair is in there, a silent story of love and loss hanging on. The wall, the storm rages on, its constant roar a backdrop to the small pocket of warmth and life inside the store. The silence between you and Ilara has been definitively broken, not by a grand confession, but by the simple, shared necessity of seeking shelter. You talk about past storms, about the price of flour, about the stubbornness of the local soil. It's a conversation built of small, ordinary things, but it feels extraordinary. You are learning the rhythm of her speech, the way a small smile touches her eyes before it reaches her lips. You are no longer just the quiet cowboy and the resilient widow. You are Caleb and Ilara, two people talking, trapped together by a weeping sky. The storm settles into a long gray siege. The rain is a constant drumming presence on the general store's tin roof, a sound that insulates the five of you from the rest of the world. An hour passes. The light outside begins to fail, shifting from the bruised gray of the storm to the deeper blue of a premature twilight. Henry lights a second kerosene lantern, and the store is filled with a warm, flickering glow that pushes back against the gloom. The checker players, Jeb and Silas, are lost in their game, their quiet murmurs a part of the room's gentle hum. Henry is busy taking inventory, his pencil scratching softly on a notepad. A pocket of quiet has formed around you and Ilara, near. The comforting warmth of the stove. The small talk has died down, leaving a silence that is no longer awkward, but companionable. Your gaze wanders around the store, settling on a display of seed packets near the counter, their colorful illustrations promising impossible bounty. Plump tomatoes, hardy beans, golden corn. On a whim, to fill the quiet, you ask, anything. And these packets actually grow well around here? Ilara follows your gaze. A strange, soft expression crosses her face. "It's a challenge," she says. "The soil is stubborn. You have to be more stubborn than the soil." She pauses, looking, not at the seeds, but at something far away, deep in her own memory. "My husband Thomas. He was convinced he could grow apples here. You stay perfectly still, recognizing the shift in her tone. This is new territory. You have become the guardian of a sudden, fragile confidence. You simply listen. He was. A reader, she continues, her voice low and warm with recollection. He'd get pamphlets from the land-grant colleges back east, full of new ideas about dry farming. He'd read them to me at night. He was a man who believed you could charm. A cactus into bloom with a good argument. A small, sad, beautiful smile touches her lips. He ordered 3 saplings from a nursery in Ohio, paid a fortune for them. When they arrived, they were just sad little sticks. Everyone told him he was a fool. Her story paints a picture in your mind. You see a young couple, full of hope, on a dusty patch of land under this same wide sky. You see a man with dirt under his fingernails and dreams in his eyes. This is the story behind the story you overheard, the light that casts the shadow. Historians often debate whether frontier women were willing partners in their husbands' ventures. Listening to the fondness in Alara's voice, you know she wasn't just a participant. She was a co-conspirator in that dream. He picked a spot for his orchard, on the east side of a small rise, to protect them from the worst of the wind. He dug the holes himself, hauled water from the creek, bucket by bucket, and after all his. Scientific reading, she adds, a humorous wink entering her voice. He still paid a traveling dowser a silver $1 to find the best spot for a well. He said it was just hedging his bets. She falls silent for a moment, lost in the memory. You don't speak, don't move. You just hold the space for her. He babied those trees like they were his own children. He was so proud when the first blossoms appeared that spring. Tiny, pinkish-white flowers. He said it was a miracle. Her voice catches slightly, but she steadies it. He never got to taste the apples. There it is, the quiet, understated sorrow beneath the warm memory. She doesn't elaborate on the falling timber, the accident. She doesn't have to. You feel the weight of what's unsaid, the turnover you had earlier. She says, finally looking back at you, her eyes clear. It was from one of his trees. It's the only one that survived. And knowledge lands in your gut with a gentle thud. The pastry you ate was not just food. It was history. It was a promise, a memory, the last fruit of a lost dream. You think of the piece still wrapped in your saddlebag, and it suddenly feels like the most valuable thing you own. You simply nod, unable to find the right words, hoping your expression conveys the understanding you feel. You have just been trusted with a piece of her heart, a story offered up in the quiet intimacy of a storm. Asterisk, her story settles in the quiet space between you. It's a heavy thing, that little piece of her past she has handed you. The air in the store feels charged. With it. Your first instinct, the one that has guided you for years, is to retreat into yourself, to give a slow, respectful nod and let the silence return, letting her confidence be the last word. But you look at her face, illuminated by the warm lantern. Light, and you see the trust she has placed in you. It is a debt that must be repaid in kind. To meet her vulnerability with your own wall of silence would be an insult. You, a man who uses words like they're precious coins, must now spend few. You clear your throat, and the sound is rough. You can feel a physical resistance in your chest, a fight against years of practiced reticence. My father, you begin, the words coming out slowly, carefully. He tried to grow apples once. Back in Missouri. Alara's eyes widen slightly, but she says nothing. She simply waits, giving you the same gift of patient silence you just gave her. He wasn't fighting the soil so much. You continue, a wry, sad smile touching your lips. His biggest enemy was the bank. You tell her, in short, clipped sentences, about the farm you grew up on. Not a grand story, just a series of fading images. The smell of the hayloft, the feel of the sun on your back, the sight of your father. standing in his fields, looking proud. You speak of the hope that lived in that place, and you tell her how it ended. Not with a bang, like a timber falling, but with a slow, grinding whisper. You talk about the railroad. Economists would later debate whether the railroad's expansion was a net positive for the small farmer. But you know your truth. It brought competition from farther away and freight monopolies that squeezed you dry. Then came the panic of 1873, a financial storm that swept across the country like a prairie fire. The bank called in the loan, and just like that, it was over. They took everything. You say, your voice flat, devoid of self-pity. It is simply a fact. The land, the house, the animals. My father's pride. We were left with nothing but the clothes on our backs. You remember seeing hobo signs as a boy, strange chalk marks on fences and barns, a secret language for men who had no home. You never imagined you'd become one of them. I learned then that if you don't have anything, nobody can take anything from you. You state. Learned that the only thing you can count on to be in the same place tomorrow is the horizon. This is the core of you, the truth you've carried like a stone in your gut for years. It's the reason you ride. Not for adventure, not for freedom in the way the dime novels write about it. You ride because to stop moving is to risk putting down roots. And you know from bitter experience that roots can be torn out of the ground, leaving a wound that never heals. Your solitude isn't a preference. It's a fortress. When you finish, the silence that returns is different. It's not empty. It's full of a new, shared understanding. Alara doesn't offer pity. She doesn't say, I'm sorry. Her gaze is one of profound empathy. She, who lost a future to a sudden tragedy, is looking at a man who lost his past to a slow, creeping one. Both of you are left standing in the wreckage of a dream of a life lived on the land. So you see, you say, a final, quiet confession. Some of us are quiet because there's not much left to say. She simply nods, a slow, deep acknowledgement. And in that moment, the last of the walls between you crumbles. You feel strangely light, as if you've just set down a heavy pack you didn't realize you were carrying. You are no longer the mysterious cowboy or the brave widow. You are Caleb and Alara, two people sitting by a stove in a storm who have just traded the stories of how they came to be alone in a town called Solitude. The storm breaks as quietly as it arrived violently. Sometime deep in the night, the percussive drumming on the roof subsides to a gentle patter, and then to a hushed dripping. The wind sighs itself to sleep through a crack in the general stores. From the window, you see a sliver of moon, sharp and clean in a sky scrubbed clear of clouds. The siege is over. Henry the store owner stretches. Well, folks, reckon the worst is past. The small group breaks apart, the spell of shared confinement broken. Jeb and Silas pocket their checkers and head for their respective homes. You and Alara are left by the stove. Good night, Alara, you say, the name feeling more comfortable. Now, good night, Caleb, she replies softly. There's a universe of understanding in that simple exchange. Your camp by the creek will be a sea of mud, so you head to the livery stable. The stable boy lets you climb the ladder to the hayloft, a common courtesy for stranded travelers. You burrow a nest for yourself in the sweet-smelling hay. It's a 5-star accommodation compared to the cold, wet ground, and you find that Silas, rustling in the stall below, is a more comforting roommate than many men you've shared a bunkhouse with. As you drift off to sleep, the day's events play over in your mind, not the storm, but the quiet confessions exchanged in the lantern light. You wake to a world reborn. Sunlight, brilliant and pure, streams through the hayloft door. You walk outside, and the air is so clean it's like taking your first breath. The sky is a vast, aching blue. The dust is gone, replaced by the rich, earthy scent of petrichor, the smell of rain on dry earth, a fragrance of renewal. The town of solitude, laid out on its simple, functional single street, looks like it has been given a bath. The puddles in the street are like mirrors, reflecting the endless sky. You see Jeb, the old checker player, meticulously sweeping mud. From the boardwalk in front of the store, with a look of grim determination, as if the mud had personally offended him, you head for the bakery. There is no excuse in your mind today, no fabricated chore. Your steps are unhurried, your purpose clear. You are simply a man going to a bakery on a beautiful morning. You push the door open. The bell chimes, its note as clear as the morning air. The room is filled with golden light and the soul-stirring smell of fresh bread and brewing coffee. Elara is behind the counter, arranging loaves on a shelf. She looks up as you enter, and she smiles. It's not the small, knowing lift of the lips from before. It's a full, genuine smile, one that starts in her eyes and spreads across her entire face. It's like the sun coming out from behind the clouds all over again. It changes everything. You feel a responding smile break across your own face, a wide, unfamiliar expression that feels startlingly good. You have a brief, foolish moment of panic, wondering if you remembered to comb your hair with your fingers this morning. Morning. Elara. You say, "Morning, Caleb," she replies, and her voice holds the same warmth as her smile. Coffee? She asks, though she is already reaching for a mug. Please, you say. And a loaf of that bread, if it's ready. The words are easy, comfortable. This is not a transaction of necessity or a silent negotiation. It's a ritual, a pleasure. She passes you the steaming mug and a paper-wrapped loaf, still warm from the oven. Your fingers brush as you take them from her, but this time there is no electric shock of surprise. There is only a simple, pleasant warmth. You look out the clean window, past the town, to the hazy line of the Great Western Cattle Trail in the distance. For years, trails like that were your whole world, a world of constant motion. Now, standing here in the quiet sunlight of this bakery, you feel, for the first time in a very long time, perfectly still, and you don't feel the urge to run. The silence between you is no longer a void to be filled, but a comfortable space to be shared. It is a new understanding, as clean and clear as the morning after the storm. Asterisk, you take your coffee and bread to the small table by the window, the same one you occupied yesterday. But today, you are not a man hiding in plain sight. You are a customer, a neighbor, enjoying a moment of peace. You break off a piece of the bread. The crust is perfect, the inside soft and warm. You watch as Elara moves about her bakery, a quiet whirlwind of purpose. She refills the coffee pot, wipes down the counter, slides a tray of biscuits into the display case. There's a simple, profound beauty in her competence, in the way she has built this world of warmth and sustenance for herself. The town comes to life around you. Olson the blacksmith comes in, his face clean of soot, and buys a whole pie, nodding a gruff "Morning, Caleb" to you on his way out. A miner from a nearby silver claim tries to pay for a roll with company scrip, which Elara politely but firmly refuses, insisting on government coin. You watch two young boys outside the window excitedly trade penny dreadfuls, their lurid covers depicting impossible gunfights and daring escapes. It's a world away from the quiet reality you've found here. You finish your coffee, the bottom of the mug appearing too soon. The sun is high now. The muddy street is already beginning to dry in patches. The trail, that old familiar friend, is waiting. Social historians are always debating how much people really moved around back then. Was everyone a rootless wanderer like the legends say, or did most folks find a place and dig in? For years, you have been living proof of the myth. A man in constant motion. But the myth feels thin this morning. It feels lonely. You stand, your chair scraping softly on the floorboards. You walk to the door, your hand on the latch. This is it. The fork in the trail. You can pull the door open and walk back into the life you know, the life of dust and distance, leaving this interlude as a warm, strange memory. Or you can turn. You turn. Elara is watching you from the counter, her hand still. She knows what this moment is. You search for the right words, but grand speeches aren't your language. You look at your own calloused hands, hands made for work. You look at the heavy flour sacks stacked against the far wall. You look at her. Elara, you begin, your voice steady. I was just wondering, all this baking, the lifting, and the wood chopping. Do you ever need a hand with the heavy work? The question hangs in the air between you, simple, practical, and yet holding the weight of 100 unspoken emotions. It is not a declaration of love. It is an offer of partnership. It is an application for a job you hope will last a long, long time. Her smile, which had faded into a watchful quiet, returns. It is slow, dawning, and full of a light that seems to fill the entire room. She puts a hand on the sturdy wooden counter, the counter that is the heart of her small kingdom. I might, she says, her voice soft. I might be in need of just such a thing. Why don't you come back this afternoon? We can talk about it then. It's not a promise of forever, but it's an open door. It's a future. It's the only answer you needed. I'll do that, you say, a bedrock certainty in your own voice. You give her one last, long look, a look that seals the bargain. Then you open the door and step out into the brilliant, clean sunlight of wide solitude, a man with a purpose and an appointment to keep. Asterisk, a gentle quiet settles over the little town of Solitude as the afternoon light softens into gold, then amber, then the soft, dusty purple of twilight. The long shadows of the buildings stretch across the main street, and soon the street itself disappears into the peaceful dark. The story of Caleb and Elara doesn't end here. It simply joins the gentle, ongoing rhythm of the town. It becomes a quiet thread in a larger tapestry, one of freshly baked bread in the morning and the steady, reassuring sound of an axe splitting wood in the afternoon dot. Their story fades into the soft creak of a porch swing, the distant, happy shout of a child, the first chirp of a cricket under the steps you helped repair. It settles down for the night, just like the rest of the world. The worries of the trail are over. The long ride is done. There is only the feeling of finding a place to rest, a place where your silence is understood, a place where your heart, after a lifetime of wandering, can finally be still. There is only peace now, washing over you like a warm, gentle tide, pulling you softly into your own quiet harbor. Rest now. You are home.